girl stood in the middle of the dusty street with tears in her eyes, looking up at a stranger she had only met minutes before. Then she said something that made every person nearby stop and listen. "Sir, my mother doesn't need your money. She needs someone who won't leave." The words were too heavy for a child to carry. But 8-year-old Emma Whitaker had spent enough nights listening to her mother cry behind a closed bedroom door to understand that some wounds could not be fixed with gold. The stranger she spoke to was a man named Nathan Cole. Most people in the small Kansas settlement of Red Willow knew Nathan as the quiet rancher who lived alone beyond the eastern hills. He was not the richest man in the county. He did not own the biggest herd or the finest house, but everyone knew one thing about him. If a neighbor needed help, Nathan showed up. No questions. No payment expected. Just a steady hand and a kind heart. That was the kind of man he had become after losing everything that mattered. 10 years earlier, Nathan had dreamed of a different life. He had a wife named Rebecca, a small ranch, and a baby boy who never got the chance to grow. A harsh winter took his family one piece at a time. First the illness came, then the silence. After Rebecca was gone, Nathan stopped believing in second chances. He repaired fences. He raised cattle. He sat beside the fireplace every night with only the sound of the wind outside his cabin. People in town often told him he was still young enough to find happiness again. Nathan always gave the same answer. Some doors only open once. But he said those words because they were easier than admitting he was afraid to hope. On a warm afternoon in the summer of 1878, Nathan rode into Red Willow to deliver a shipment of leather goods and pick up supplies. His boots were covered in dust. His shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his old brown hat showed years of working under the sun. He was tying his horse outside the general store when he noticed a black carriage stopping near the town square. The carriage was too elegant for Red Willow. People turned their heads. A few men whispered. Everyone knew when someone important arrived. A woman stepped down from the carriage wearing a simple but expensive gray dress. She carried herself with quiet dignity, but Nathan noticed something others missed. She looked tired. Not physically tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too much alone. Behind her stepped a young girl with golden brown hair and a small suitcase in her hand. This was Elena Whitaker, the widow of a successful railroad investor, and her daughter Emma. After her husband's death, Elena had left the comfort of the city behind and purchased a struggling ranch outside Red Willow. She told people she wanted a fresh beginning. But the truth was harder. She wanted her daughter to grow up somewhere peaceful. Somewhere without people measuring her worth by her father's fortune. Somewhere without whispers about how a widow should behave. Nathan watched as Elena looked toward the old ranch house in the distance. The place needed work. The fences leaned. The barn roof had missing boards. The land was beautiful, but it had been neglected. Still, Elena stood there like she was ready to fight for it. Nathan respected that. A woman who had everything taken away and still chose to rebuild was not weak. It was rare. Later that afternoon, Nathan found himself near the ranch when he noticed a broken fence line. Several cattle had wandered toward the road. He could have continued riding. It was not his problem. But he stopped. For the next hour, he repaired the damaged fence and guided the cattle back. When Elena stepped outside, she found him tightening the final wooden post. "Mr. Cole," she said, "I hope you don't think I cannot manage my own property." Nathan looked up. There was no anger in her voice. Only pride. "No, ma'am," he replied. "I think a person shouldn't have to carry every burden alone." Those words surprised her. Most men who approached her wanted something. A business deal. A favor. A piece of her fortune. But this man had not even asked her name before helping. "I should pay you," Elena said. Nathan shook his head. "Then you'll make me feel like a hired hand instead of a neighbor." A small smile appeared on her face. It was the first real smile she had worn in months. From the porch, Emma watched the two adults talking. The little girl had been watching her mother closely since they arrived in Kansas. She saw the way Elena pretended not to be scared. She saw the way she stared at old letters from her husband after everyone went to sleep. Children often notice the pain adults try hardest to hide. And Emma had noticed everything. Over the next few weeks, Nathan became a familiar face at the Whitaker ranch. He repaired a broken wagon wheel. He fixed the barn door. He showed Emma how to care for a frightened young horse. The girl followed him everywhere. "You talk to animals like they understand you," she told him one morning. Nathan smiled. "Sometimes they understand better than people do." Emma thought about that. Then she looked toward the house where her mother was sitting alone. She used to laugh more, Emma whispered. Nathan became quiet. He knew that kind of sadness. The kind that settles into a home after someone important is gone. I'm sorry about your father, he said. Emma looked down. I miss him. Nathan nodded slowly. I miss people too. That was the first time Emma realized Nathan was not just a lonely rancher. He was someone who understood. A few days later, Red Willow held its annual market day. The whole town gathered around the square. Nathan was repairing a broken wagon when Emma walked up beside him. She looked nervous. What is it? Nathan asked. The girl twisted her fingers together. Then she looked toward her mother, who was standing alone near the market stalls. She doesn't tell anyone, Emma said quietly. Tell anyone what? That she cries. Nathan stopped working. Emma swallowed. She thinks I don't hear her at night. The little girl looked up at him. She says she is fine, but she is. Nathan felt a familiar ache in his chest. He had spent years pretending he was fine too. Then Emma said the words that changed everything. My mom needs a husband. Nathan froze. The hammer in his hand lowered slowly. Around them, the sounds of the market continued. Horses moved. People talked. Children laughed. But for Nathan Cole, the whole world became silent. Emma quickly added, not because she needs someone to take care of her. She looked at her mother. She needs someone who chooses her. Nathan did not know what to say. Because deep inside, he understood exactly what the little girl meant. Elena Whitaker was not looking for someone to save her. She was looking for someone who would stand beside her. But before Nathan could answer, a voice came from behind them. Emma. Elena stood there. Her face was pale. She had heard every word. The embarrassment in her eyes was clear. I apologize, Mr. Cole, she said softly. My daughter speaks before she thinks. Nathan looked at Emma, then back at Elena. And instead of laughing or making a joke, he simply said, maybe sometimes children say what grown people are too afraid to admit. Elena stared at him. Because for the first time in years, someone had seen past her wealth. Past her title. Past the widow everyone whispered about. He had seen the woman underneath. But neither of them knew that their quiet conversation had been noticed by someone else. Across the street, a man in a dark coat watched them carefully. His name was Walter Crane. And he had his own plans for Elena Whitaker's ranch. Plans that would soon test whether Nathan Cole was truly the kind of man everyone believed him to be. And whether one little girl's innocent wish could bring two broken hearts together. The morning after Emma's words echoed through the market square, Nathan Cole found himself thinking about them more than he wanted to admit. My mom needs someone who chooses her. A child's simple sentence had stayed with him through the night. Nathan had spent years convincing himself that love belonged to the past. That kind of happiness was for younger men with fewer scars and fewer memories. But now, every time he looked toward the Whitaker ranch on the hill, he remembered something he had forgotten. A person could survive alone. But surviving was not the same as living. Still, Nathan was careful. He knew Elena Whitaker was not a woman who needed rescuing. She had crossed half the country, purchased land, and started over in a place where many people expected her to fail. She was strong, and strong people deserved respect, not pity. That was why Nathan kept his distance. At least he tried. But life on the frontier had a way of bringing people together when they needed each other most. 3 days later, a heavy storm rolled across Red Willow. The sky turned dark before sunset. The wind pushed against every wooden wall in town, and the old trees near the creek bent under the force. Nathan was checking his cattle when he noticed something troubling. Smoke. Not from a chimney. From the direction of the Whitaker ranch. His heart tightened. He grabbed his coat, jumped onto his horse, and rode through the rain. When he reached the property, he saw the problem. A lantern had fallen in the storage shed. The fire had not spread far yet, but the dry wood was catching quickly. Elena was outside trying to move supplies away from the flames. Get back, Nathan called. She turned. Those tools are the only things I have left from my husband's workshop. Nathan understood. Those tools were not just objects. They were memories. He did not argue. He ran into the rain and smoke. Within minutes, neighbors arrived after seeing the glow in the distance. Together, they stopped the fire before it reached the main house. When everything finally settled, Elena stood in the muddy yard looking at the damaged shed. Her hands trembled. Nathan noticed. You hurt? He asked. She shook her head. No. But her voice told a different story. She was not afraid of the fire. She was afraid of losing another piece of her old life. Nathan picked up one of the burned tools from the ground. This can be repaired. Elena looked at him. You always say that. What? That everything can be repaired. Nathan looked at the damaged shed. Then he looked at her. Not everything. The honesty surprised her. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain fell between them. Finally, Elena asked quietly, what couldn't be repaired? Nathan looked away. My wife. The words were simple, but they carried years of pain. Elena lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Nathan nodded. I know. It was not a conversation either of them expected to have. But sometimes grief recognizes grief. That night, Elena invited Nathan and Emma inside for supper because their own kitchen was still being cleaned from the storm. Nathan almost refused. Almost. But Emma smiled when she heard the invitation. And somehow, he found himself sitting at the Whitaker family table. It was strange. For years, Nathan had eaten alone. A plate, a chair, a quiet room. Now there was laughter. Emma telling stories. Elena pretending not to laugh at her daughter's exaggerated descriptions of ranch life. And Nathan realized how much he had missed the sound of a family. After supper, Emma disappeared into the next room. Elena and Nathan sat near the fireplace. The room was warm. Peaceful. You are different from what I expected, Elena said. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? She smiled slightly. A man who wanted something. Nathan looked at the fire. Most people do. That's because most people know what I have. Nathan turned toward her. And what do you think I see? Elena hesitated. She had no answer. Nathan spoke softly. I see a woman trying to build a home for her daughter. For a moment, Elena forgot how to breathe. Because no one had said that to her since her husband died. Everyone saw the widow. The money. The property. The name. Almost nobody saw the mother. The next weeks brought small changes to the ranch. Nathan repaired the barn roof. He helped hire workers who were honest and dependable. He taught Emma how to ride. And slowly, without either of them noticing, the Whitaker ranch stopped feeling like a place Elena had purchased. It started feeling like home. But not everyone was happy. Walter Crane watched from a distance. He was a businessman who owned several properties near Red Willow. And he wanted Elena's land. A new railroad route was being discussed. If the tracks crossed near her ranch, the value of the property would rise quickly. Walter had already offered to buy it. Elena had refused. That had offended him. People in his position were not used to hearing no. You should reconsider, Walter told her one afternoon outside the general store. Elena held herself firmly. My answer has not changed. Walter smiled. A cold smile. Women alone often find the frontier difficult. Elena looked directly at him. I am not alone. Walter followed her eyes. Nathan stood nearby loading supplies into his wagon. The businessman's expression hardened. That was the moment he realized Nathan Cole was the obstacle. Not because Nathan had money. Not because he had influence. But because he had something Walter Crane could not buy. Trust. Soon, rumors began spreading through Red Willow. People whispered that Nathan was only helping Elena because he wanted her land. Some said he was pretending to be honorable. Others claimed a poor rancher had found an easy path to wealth. Nathan heard the whispers. He ignored them. But Elena noticed. She saw how people looked at him. She saw how his shoulders became heavier. One evening, she found him repairing a fence alone. You heard them, she said. Nathan kept working. I hear many things. You should not have to. He stopped. Then he looked at her. People talk because they do not know the truth. And does it not bother you? Nathan looked across the open land. Years ago, I learned something. What? A person who knows their own heart does not need every stranger to understand it. Elena felt something change inside her. Because she realized Nathan was not just kind. He was strong in a way she had rarely seen. Not the strength of a man who could lift heavy things. The strength of someone who could carry pain without letting it make him bitter. That night, Elena sat beside Emma before bed. The little girl looked up at her. Did you talk to Mr. Cole? Yes. Are you happy? Elena smiled sadly. Why do you ask? Emma shrugged. Because you look different when he is around. Elena brushed her daughter's hair back. He is a good man. Emma smiled. I knew that. But before Elena could answer, a loud crash came from outside. Both of them froze. A horse was running past the house. A riderless horse. And tied to the saddle was a message. Nathan found it first. The paper was soaked from the rain. But the words were clear. Leave Red Willow, or the next warning will not be so gentle. Nathan stared at the note. His jaw tightened. Because this was no longer about rumors. Someone was trying to scare Elena away.
This is the exact moment where the story stops being a simple frontier romance and turns into a battle of character. Notice how Nathan isn't motivated by revenge or pride. He's driven by responsibility. That's a huge difference. Up until now, he's been helping because it was the right thing to do. But the threat against Elena and Emma changes everything. When innocent people become the target, every decision suddenly carries much greater weight. And here's the real question for you. If you were in Nathan's boots, would you walk away to protect yourself? Or would you risk everything for people who have slowly become your family? That single warning note may have been meant to scare them. But it may have just created the one opponent Walter Crane never wanted, someone with nothing to prove, but everything worth protecting.
And whoever it was had just made one mistake. They had threatened the people Nathan had started caring about. The warning note sat on Nathan Cole's kitchen table for 3 days. He had read it so many times that the ink marks were beginning to blur in his mind. Leave Red Willow, or the next warning will not be so gentle. The words were meant to frighten Elena. But Nathan knew something about fear. Fear only worked when a person believed they had something to lose. And Nathan had spent years believing he had already lost everything. Now, for the first time in a long while, he had something worth protecting. Not land. Not money. People. That thought scared him more than the threat itself. Because caring about someone meant giving the world a place where it could hurt you again. The next morning, Nathan rode to the Whitaker ranch before sunrise. The sky was still gray, and the fields were covered in thin mist. Elena was already awake. She stood near the barn holding a cup of coffee, staring toward the hills. She looked like she had not slept. You should have told me sooner, Nathan said. She turned. I did not want you involved. Nathan stepped closer. Elena, I am already involved. She looked down. That is exactly what worries me. Nathan was quiet. She continued. Every person who comes close to me seems to lose something. The sadness in her voice surprised him. My husband lost his health chasing business deals. Then I lost him. My daughter lost her father. Now you are risking your peace because of us. Nathan shook his head. You think caring about someone is a burden. Isn't it? No. His answer came quickly. Elena looked at him. Nathan looked toward the empty fields. After my wife died, I spent years protecting myself from pain. His voice became softer. I thought if I stayed alone, nothing could be taken from me again. A small pause followed. But all I did was make sure I had nothing left to lose. Elena felt those words deeply. Because she understood them. They were both people who had built walls around their hearts. Walls that once protected them. Walls that had slowly become prisons. Before either could say more, a sound came from the barn. Emma ran outside. Her face was pale. Mr. Cole. Nathan immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? Emma pointed toward the back of the barn. One of the horses had escaped from its stall. The door had been forced open. Nathan walked over and examined the broken latch. This was not an accident. Someone had entered during the night. Elena covered her mouth. They were here. Nathan nodded slowly. They wanted us to know they were here. He looked around the property. The message was clear. Whoever was behind this was becoming bolder. Nathan wanted to ride straight into town and confront Walter Crane. But he knew anger could make a man careless. And careless men made mistakes. So instead, he did something unexpected. He began asking questions. Not loudly. Not like a man searching for revenge. Like a man searching for truth. He spoke with the stable owner. He spoke with the storekeeper. He spoke with the workers near the railroad survey. Slowly, pieces began coming together. Walter Crane had been buying small pieces of land around Red Willow. He had offered unfair prices. When people refused, problems followed. Broken fences. Missing supplies. Sudden complaints. Nothing serious enough to bring the law, but enough to make people give up. Nathan realized Elena was not the first person Walter had tried to push aside. She was simply the person who refused to move. That afternoon, Nathan visited Walter's office. The room was filled with expensive furniture and polished wood. Everything about it looked designed to impress visitors. Walter looked up from his desk. Well, the rancher finally decided to visit. Nathan remained standing. You sent the message. Walter smiled. Can you prove it? Nathan said nothing. That answer pleased Walter. I thought not. He leaned back. You should understand something, Cole. The world belongs to men who know how to take opportunities. Nathan looked around the room. Is that what you call it? What? Taking from people who cannot fight back. Walter laughed. You are an idealist. No. Nathan stepped closer. I just remember what happens when people forget kindness. For the first time, Walter's smile faded. You think you are some kind of hero? Nathan shook his head. No. He looked toward the window. I'm just a man who knows what he stands for. Nathan walked away. But Walter was not finished. That night a heavy storm arrived. The wind howled across the plains. Rain hit the roof of the Whitaker house like handfuls of stones. Elena sat beside Emma's bed while lightning flashed outside. The little girl looked worried. Will he come back? Elena knew exactly who she meant. Nathan. Emma nodded. He always comes when people need him. Elena smiled faintly. Yes. But she wondered something she did not say. Who would come when Nathan needed someone? Later that night, a loud crash shook the ranch. Nathan, who had been staying in a small room near the barn to help protect the property, grabbed his coat and rushed outside. The storm was fierce. The old barn door had broken loose. As he fought against the wind to secure it, he noticed something strange. A lantern was burning near the far side of the property. Someone was there. Nathan moved carefully through the rain. Behind the barn, he found a man trying to loosen the wagon harness. The stranger froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the man turned and ran. Nathan followed. The muddy ground made every step difficult. Finally, the stranger slipped near the creek. Nathan caught up. But instead of attacking him, Nathan grabbed his arm and pulled him up. The man stared in surprise. You could have left me there. Nathan looked at him. That would not make me better than the person who sent you. The stranger looked away. His name was Samuel Price. And after a long silence, he finally admitted the truth. Walter Crane had hired him. But Samuel had not come to destroy the ranch. He had come because he was desperate. Walter had threatened to take his family's land too. He told me if I did not help him, I would lose everything, Samuel confessed. Nathan understood. Because he knew what it felt like to be cornered. What exactly was he planning? Nathan asked. Samuel hesitated. Then he pulled a folded paper from his coat. I found this in his office. Nathan opened it. His eyes narrowed. It was a contract. A fake agreement showing that Elena's late husband supposedly owed Walter a large amount of money. The same kind of trick he had used before. But this time there was something else. A name. A witness. A person who could prove the entire thing was a lie. Someone who lived in another state. Someone Nathan knew he would have to find. The next morning, Nathan told Elena the truth. She stared at the document. I thought we were safe. Nathan looked at her. We are not safe yet. The fear returned to her eyes. What are we going to do? Nathan looked toward the horizon. A decision had already formed in his mind. I'm going east. Elena froze. For how long? I don't know. And if you don't find what you need? Nathan looked back at her. Then I will keep searching. The answer was simple. But Elena heard something deeper. Nathan was not fighting for land. He was not fighting for money. He was fighting for the future of a family that had quietly become his own. As Nathan prepared his horse, Emma ran outside. She held something in her small hand. A wooden horse. The same kind of toy Nathan had carved for her months earlier. I want you to take this, she said. Nathan smiled. Why? Because you always say broken things can be fixed. She placed it in his hand. So come back and fix this. Nathan looked at the little wooden horse. Then he looked at Elena. Neither of them spoke, but both understood. This was no longer just a neighbor helping another neighbor. Something deeper had begun. Nathan mounted his horse and rode toward the eastern road. Behind him stood the woman he was beginning to love, the little girl who believed in him, and a town waiting to discover whether one honest man could stand against someone who had spent years hiding behind wealth. But Nathan did not know something important. The person he needed to find was not simply holding proof. They were carrying a secret about Elena's late husband. A secret that could change everything. Nathan Cole had ridden through storms, crossed empty plains, and faced moments when most men would have turned back. But the hardest journey of his life was not measured by miles. It was measured by what he carried in his heart. A hope he was afraid to lose. For 3 days, Nathan followed the trail east toward Missouri. The wooden horse Emma had given him stayed in his coat pocket the entire way. It was a simple toy. Nothing valuable. Nothing that could be sold. But every time he touched it, he remembered something important. Someone was waiting for him to return. That was something he had not felt in years. Back in Red Willow, Elena tried to stay strong. She worked beside her ranch hands. She checked the cattle. She repaired what she could. But every evening, when the sun disappeared behind the hills, she found herself looking toward the road. Waiting. Emma noticed. You miss him? Elena looked at her daughter. Yes. Emma smiled. I knew you would. Elena laughed softly. How? Because you look at him the same way I look at my father's old things. The answer caught Elena by surprise. Children often spoke simple truths that adults spent years avoiding. Nathan had become part of their family before anyone had said it out loud. Meanwhile, Nathan finally reached a small town outside St. Louis. There, he found the person mentioned in the document. A former bookkeeper named Thomas Avery. Thomas was an older man with tired eyes and a memory full of regrets. When Nathan showed him the papers, the old man became quiet. I wondered when someone would come looking for the truth. Nathan leaned forward. What do you know? Thomas looked toward the window. Elena Whitaker's husband was not a careless businessman like people believed. Nathan listened carefully. He discovered that Walter Crane was stealing money from several investors. Nathan's expression hardened. Why didn't he expose him? Thomas sighed. Because he tried. The room became silent. Before he could reveal everything, he became sick. He left copies of the records with someone he trusted. Who? Thomas looked directly at him. Elena's. Nathan frowned. She never mentioned that. Because she never knew. Thomas opened an old wooden box. Inside were several letters. One of these was supposed to be delivered after his death. Nathan carefully picked up the envelope. It had Elena's name written on it. She never received it, Thomas said. Why? Thomas looked away. Because someone intercepted it. Nathan understood immediately. Walter Crane had not simply wanted the ranch. He wanted the truth buried. Nathan returned to Red Willow, with the letters and documents secured safely inside his coat. But when he arrived, he knew something was wrong. The town was unusually quiet. People stood outside the courthouse. Elena was there. And beside her stood Walter Crane. Nathan's heart tightened. He quickly walked forward. What is happening? Elena turned. Relief filled her eyes. You came back. Nathan looked at Walter. The businessman smiled. How touching. Nathan ignored him. What is this? Walter held up a document. A legal claim. Nathan's eyes narrowed. You know it is false. Walter smiled. Do I? Before Nathan could answer, Elena stepped forward. No more running. Everyone looked at her. For months, she had carried the weight of fear. But not anymore. She held the envelope Nathan had brought. My husband left this for me. Walter's expression changed. Only slightly. But Nathan noticed. And so did everyone else. Elena opened the letter. Her husband's words were read aloud. He explained the truth. He explained Walter's scheme. He named the people involved. He left proof that the ranch belonged to Elena free and clear. The crowd became silent. For the first time, Walter Crane had no clever answer. No excuse. No story. Just the truth standing in front of him. The town sheriff stepped forward. This time he did not look away. The evidence was too strong. Too many people had seen what Walter had done. The man who had spent years controlling others with fear finally faced the consequences of his own choices. As Walter was taken away, he looked at Nathan. "You think you won?" Nathan looked back calmly. "No." Walter frowned. Nathan glanced toward Elena and Emma. "I think they finally get the life they deserved." And that was the difference between them. Walter fought for possessions. Nathan fought for people. Several weeks later, Red Willow felt different. The whispers that once followed Elena disappeared. The same people who had doubted Nathan now greeted him with respect. But Nathan cared little about their opinions. He had already received something far more valuable. A home. One evening, as the sun painted the prairie gold, Nathan sat on the porch of the Whitaker ranch. Emma was nearby reading a book. Elena stepped outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him. "Do you remember the first time Emma spoke to you?" Nathan smiled. "I remember. She embarrassed me terribly." Nathan laughed. She was honest. Elena sat beside him. She was right too. Nathan looked at her. The woman who had once arrived in Red Willow carrying grief now looked peaceful. "I used to think losing everything meant my life was over," she said quietly. Nathan listened. "But then I learned something." "What?" "Sometimes losing what you had makes room for what you were meant to find." Nathan looked across the land. The fences were repaired. The fields were growing. The house that once felt empty now carried laughter. He thought about the years he spent alone. The nights when he believed happiness was something he had missed forever. Then he looked at Elena. At Emma. And he knew he had been wrong. A few months later, the people of Red Willow gathered at the small church near the river. There were flowers on the wooden steps. Children ran through the grass. The whole town came to witness something they once thought impossible. Nathan Cole and Elena Whitaker were getting married. Nathan wore a simple dark suit. Elena wore a modest white dress. Not the kind worn to impress wealthy strangers. The kind worn by a woman who had finally found where she belonged. Emma stood beside them with a proud smile. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, the little girl whispered loudly, "They should hurry, we already waited long enough." The entire church laughed. Even Nathan. After the ceremony, the family returned to the ranch. There was music. There was food. There was dancing beneath the Kansas sky. Nathan stood outside later that night, watching the lantern light shine through the windows. Years ago, he had believed his story was finished. He was wrong. Sometimes life does not give people what they expected. Sometimes it gives them something better. Not a perfect past. Not a life without pain. But a reason to keep going. Emma once asked a lonely rancher for a husband for her mother. She did not know she was really asking for something much bigger. She was asking for a family to be restored. And in the wide, unforgiving land of the American frontier, 3 broken hearts found something stronger than wealth. They found each other. Because the greatest fortunes were never hidden in banks or buried beneath the earth.
What makes this story memorable isn't the land dispute, or even Walter Crane's downfall. It's the way every major decision was shaped by loyalty, integrity, and compassion instead of greed. Nathan Cole never fought for wealth, status, or recognition. He stood beside Elena because he believed that real strength means protecting people, even when there is no guarantee of success. In the end, the truth prevailed. Walter's deception was exposed, and a family that had been broken by grief found hope again through trust and perseverance. It's a powerful reminder that character always outlasts manipulation, and that the greatest victories are often measured by the lives we change rather than the possessions we gain. What do you think was the most emotional moment in this story? The little girl's heartfelt wish, Nathan's sacrifice, or Walter finally facing justice? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves inspiring Western tales, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories and cinematic breakdowns.
The greatest fortune was always the people who chose to stay.